a Playlist original.
She is seductive. She is passionate. She is Christine, a 1958 Plymouth Fury with a taste for blood. Nothing you can do can stop her, because how do you kill something that can't possibly be alive? Christine, Body by Plymouth, Soul by Satan, rated R. Watch out for her soon at a theater near you.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster with your host Gaius and Jackson. We are recording on Sunday, December 10th, which is very, very uncommon for us. I think we've done it
a handful
before,
of times,
maybe.
Okay, maybe not that many. Okay.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. Well, I know I've done it. We've done it for other people's shows for sure.
Yes, maybe that's what I'm. thinking.
I think in the early days of you being on, we did one like right before I think the Oscar nominations came out, or was it the Oscar telecast? It was one of them.
Right.
We did something on a Sunday and we like did like predictions, and then so we can actually get that out. So Sunday's not a bad day because usually I am out on Sundays. I actually haven't gone out the last 3 Sundays, which has made my friends think that something's like wrong, and they're like touching my forehead. They're like, "Are you sick? What's wrong with you?" But it's been nice not to go out on Sunday after very long weekend. I don't know if it's like that right now for you guys, but just like the holiday parties have already started here.
Okay.
We had that whole like 12 bars of Christmas thing on Friday.
Yep, that was last week for us. Yeah.
A friend had a Christmas party yesterday, and that was a lot. And and then we got more Christmas parties this week, and then my birthday is a week from today.
Right, that's right.
And so there's going to be a combination of that and more Christmas parties. So I have like a ton of Christmas accessories, sweaters, shirts that get a good workout during this time of year.
Yeah, definitely. I have like one Christmas sweater to my name, and it's Bud Light themed. That's just to compare. But no, it's Sundays are very sleepy over here. I mean, I guess in my demographic, like I'm a Monday to Friday worker, so we're usually gearing down, getting ready for the week ahead, and it's a great day. Actually, it's a great day of the week for me to get a couple flicks in, like I was able to do today. But for this one that we're chatting today, I got in on a Saturday in the middle of the day, or actually no, it was more towards the evening, but it was on the actual 40th anniversary of Christine's release, which rarely ends up being the case. Like actually, for me anyway, seeing a movie on its actual anniversary, even though we covered lots of anniversaries, it felt very right, and I was happy to pay respects to a movie that I really hold dearly, and from someone who I love, like John Carpenter. It just felt awesome.
Yeah, I watched it today, actually.
Nice.
Pretty much before we got on for this. Like when you told me like I'm good in an hour and a half, I was like 20 minutes into it.
Oh, okay, sweet. That's perfect.
I was like, that's perfect amount of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely a fun rewatch. I told you offline I haven't watched it in years, like more than.
Could you ballpark it? Okay,
I think more than 10. Yeah, so it's been a really long time, and I don't know why it hadn't been like a go-to like during September, October movie for me, because I was watching it today. I was like, oh, this is like really good. It's like, it has some cheesy moments for sure. Like it's definitely a product of its time, but it also had some really cool like visual cues in it.
Oh my god, yeah.
I also love, even though it's not like up there with like his best scores, I love the score for the movie too. It's like pretty understated and good for like the movie itself.
I'd put it up, right below like Halloween and The Thing. Like up there, it feels very Carpenter-esque, but not maybe quite as memorable as those two movies, but on par for sure. I love the score in this movie.
Yep, for sure. And actually some good acting too from like some of the leads, particularly the lead actor is really good in this. Like probably much better than you would expect from an 80s horror movie of this type. And there was some good like kind of like real good character moments where I was like looking at it where it felt more intelligent than it had any right to be in how it was depicting this kind of like transformation of Artie coinciding with the possession of the car and all that. I was like, this feels a lot deeper than this shit for a horror movie from 1983.
Right. Well, that's what Carpenter was so good at, right? Like he did 8 movies this decade, and all of which are fantastic in their own right. But like Christine, to me, feels like a little bit different. I don't know what it is about it. It's a standout for me, obviously amongst greats like The Thing and Prince of Darkness. It just has such a charm to it, and I think maybe that part of that is that it's an adaptation of the great Stephen King's work. I think that might have something to do with it. Like that guy just can write a horror horror piece. So I think, with those two greats collaborating, it's bound to be a memorable time.
Yeah, I mean, like the stuff I was reading, like before we got on to kind of like look up, whatever behind the scenes stuff I could find, is that even the writer for the movie, like when they presented it to him, was like, thought the premise was just like ridiculous. He was like, you really want me to like tackle a movie about a car that is like possessed and starts killing people? And then he read the book, which I know they took some liberties with. We'll probably talk about in the movie.
Sure thing.
But he said he was halfway through the book and he was like, oh, this is so much better than I thought it would be, because it really is more about this kind of transformation coinciding with this guy and the car going together.
Exactly.
And all that. And, it's not, you could really make a dumb movie about a killer car for sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it's done a million times, but this is far from it.
Far from it. Yeah. There's a lot to really like about it that we're going to get into, but we didn't want to leave you guys hanging on the award season stuff, because we were kind of in the middle of that too. And I know we mentioned some things on our last episode, and we did say, like, full disclosure, like, we are cranking out a lot of episodes God, pretty much this week. Like the next
we're gonna be seeing a lot of each other in the next couple of days.
That's probably the most Jackson and I have seen each other since starting this.
Definitely.
Through the the camera and all that. But we're gonna try to stay as topical as we can, especially with the award season stuff, because we know that is important for you guys listening. And when we can sneak it into some of these episodes that are gonna be premiering between now and pretty much the new year, we will do that as well as we can.
Right.
Thankfully, so far, it's been relatively, like, there hasn't been like a ton of news, and it's mostly just the award season stuff. So that is makes it a lot easier for us. To kind of do that. But first, I guess we will talk about the National Board of Review. A lot of people were waiting for them to reveal their picks for particularly best film, because sometimes it does coincide with Oscar, not all the time, but sometimes it does.
Okay.
And the National Board of Review named Killers of the Flower Moon their best film, and that was the second major awards honor for the film this particular week, after it won the top prize from the New York Film Critics Circle. Scorsese was also picked as National Board of Review's Best Director. Lily Gladstone repeated her New York Film Circle win by being named Best Actress for the film as well. So that is a very significant amount of awards for good old Killers of the Flower Moon. It also
momentum,
It also scored in Best Cinematography, which I mean, I've seen it listed with. Well, that was a good fit.
Okay, I was surprised. Not what I was expecting. I mean, I love that movie. I thought it was shot beautifully, but I wouldn't even like have it in my top 5. That just surprising face.
Well, you know what? Yeah, when I've seen it listed for other people, it's been like either they're like number 5, number 6, or something like that. So it is listed for certain people. But I was kind of shocked that it won there. But the Rodrigo Prieto, who did the cinematography, also won for production design work on Barbie. So good job for him. Other National Board winners announced today. Alexander Payne's The Holdovers won in 3 categories. Paul Giamatti won Best Actor for the National Board of Review.
Nice.
Divine Joy Randolph won for Best Supporting Actress. And David Hemmingson won for his Best Original Screenplay. That has been hopping. This movie's moved up a lot. You'll see in the other things we're going to mention right after this. So its chances seem pretty high that it will be nominated for a significant amount of Oscars, unless something crazy happens.
I got no qualms with that. That movie was fantastic.
I don't either. And actually, the more I thought about it since we've done our episode, the more I've started to like it. So
lingering impact.
Yeah, a bit. Like, I talked about it with a friend who saw it, and then listened to our episode after they saw it, and he loved it so much that it might be his number 1 or number 2 movie. And he was like you,
where 2023. Okay.
Yeah, and he was like you, where he was Oppenheimer all the way. Like he was riding that train all the way until November, I guess, till he saw, or yes, December for him when he saw The Holdovers. And now he can't decide whether it's going to be that or Oppenheimer. He's like, he still has to think about it. Best Adapted Screenplay went to Tony McNamara for Poor Things. I haven't seen it yet, but I really want to.
I cannot wait.
It's really. I heard it's really weird, but really good.
I mean, expecting that from Yorgos Lanthimos, but I've heard like more like controversial takes about that movie that got me really intrigued to see. Nothing that I really expect is going to be that controversial. I think people are sort of looking for things,
I think some like prudish critics are being like, oh, it's so this, and like, or it's
needless
just,
to say, very excited for that movie.
I am kind of putting a interesting wrinkle in the best supporting actor race. Mark Ruffalo for that movie, Poor Things, won best supporting actor for the National Board Review.
That's awesome.
So that's cool. And then the top films for the National Board Review, of course, Killers of the Flower Moon won best picture, but there are other films that they acknowledged were The Holdovers, Poor Things, Barbie, The Boy and the Heron, which is the Japanese animated
Hayao Miyazaki. Yes, I'm supposed to see that this week, actually.
Which was #1 at the box office today. Surprising. A good time for those kind of movies. That was #1 today, and we won't really get to mention box office, but Godzilla -1 only dropped 27% in its second weekend.
Whoa, that's
$8.3 million. So
I want to see that so bad here.
I know, I do too. It was supposed to end its North America run on December 7th, but they saw how well it was received, so they extended it. I don't know how far, but they should extend it throughout December.
That would be nice. Sadly, it doesn't look like it's playing at my local cinema, which is very disappointing, but I will be looking for that whenever it comes to whatever streaming service, because that movie has been like a surprise shocker, I think, from out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then other movies listed in their top 10: Ferrari, The Iron Claw, Maestro, and Oppenheimer. And then they gave for international film, Anatomy of a Fall, which you're probably going to see a lot of the two as well. And best documentary went to Still, a Michael J. Fox movie, which also earned a lot of critical acclaim when it came out as well. So that is the National Board of Review. But for good frame of reference, they named Top Gun Maverick their best film. And that didn't turn into a Best Picture win, but it did get nominated for Best Picture. So it doesn't always link up, but sometimes it does. So we will see. They're giving out their awards on January, formally giving out their awards on January 11th in a proper ceremony, though.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes. I actually think the choices that they picked, like for the exception of Ferrari, which kind of has been left out of most conversations lately, it seems pretty much like in line, I guess, with what we're expecting. And in a good way. I mean, like, they're acknowledging movies like The Holdovers or Barbie, of course. Some people that are still angry that it's not. It's definitely getting a Best Picture nomination. I think it's.
You think so? Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is. What awards it's going to win is a totally different story. I think it's got too much competition overall to really.
It's been a massive year, right? Like, I don't think there's very many guarantees when it comes to the Academy Awards. Definitely guaranteed nominations, like several movies, but I really think for a lot of significant categories, it's going to be down to several movies.
Yeah, I believe so too. And also announcing their nominees were the Astra Awards for Film and Creative Arts. This was formerly the Hollywood Critics Association Awards, and I got to vote for these. So some of my picks actually made the cut, and I get to actually go to the ceremony on January 6th. So that will be a fun, interesting thing for us to possibly cover.
Really, that is super neat.
In person kind of thing. I'll do some of the. So best cinematography, they nominated John Wick Chapter 4, Killers of the Flower Moon. Again, they nominated Maestro, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and Saltburn.
Okay, I wanted to hear Saltburn for cinematography because when you had mentioned that Killers had won for, I voted Saltburn, man.
Yeah, I was shocked that it's. I'm actually, we'll see what the Golden Globes do tomorrow because I feel like they're going to be like it's major. I think. As we keep calling him, our boy Barry might get an Oscar nomination possibly because he's been popping up a lot too. But I feel like they're going to leave the film out as a whole in several big categories, and probably because it's so divisive. But
yeah, and it's you can argue that there's a lot of other great contenders, and other than the Best Picture category, you're limited to 5 movies, so that I guess is sort of an excuse. But I mean, that movie I think deserves a lot of awards attention, but. I would love to be able to cover that. So we get the Golden Globe nominations on
tomorrow,
Monday, right?
In the morning. Yeah. bright and early.
I'm very excited. I'll be looking at that instead of doing work.
Yeah, I'll be part of my work. So there you go.
There you go. Lucky you.
Best costume design: Barbie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Poor Things, Killers of the Flower Moon, and The Color Purple. Best editing: Anatomy of a Fall, John Wick Chapter 4, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and The Holdovers. Yeah, you're gonna see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse popping up in other big categories too, which is kind of
good.
I thought they were just gonna acknowledge it in the the animated categories, but it's very clear that they're like, this was one of the best movies of the year, and not just
I completely agree. It's my 10 so far. Yeah.
Best original song: Barbie got 2, What I Was Made For, by Billie Eilish, and I'm Just Ken, which I think if it gets nominated for best original song, because at the Oscars they perform those usually live at the ceremony, so I'm like wondering if Ryan Gosling will actually perform it live at the ceremony.
That would be pretty funny. Yes.
Also, Dance Tonight, also from Barbie, by Dua Lipa. So 3 of their songs. And then Peaches from the Super Mario Brothers movie, which was a big original song from that movie. It became a big TikTok thing as well. But yeah, if Barbie loses any one of those, that'd be really crazy. Because it has 3 chances to win.
Such a high probability.
Another interesting one: best publicity campaign. So this is like marketing campaign. Barbie, John Wick Chapter 4. For that? Yeah, Barbie, John Wick Chapter 4, Megan, Oppenheimer, the Super Mario Brothers movie, and Wonka.
Why Wonka?
I feel like Barbie and Oppenheimer should win this combined.
I completely agree. That's like an unprecedented, and it seems like that marketing was like an unprecedented, at least to this scale, marketing campaign strategy for a long time. I think Megan is a nice nomination though, because that movie,
and it kind of had a viral campaign too that really worked.
Still have not snuck that watch in yet this year, but it's on my.
It's so crazy that it came out almost a year ago. Like I saw it in January. Like and I liked it. I mean, I definitely didn't hate it at all. It was a pretty entertaining horror movie. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it kind of came and made its money and dip pretty much. Best score: Elemental, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, Saltburn, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse all got nominated for best original score. I'm just saying this now. I've been rooting for Oppenheimer's score since I saw the movie.
I have 3 songs on my scores playlist that I routinely listen to from that movie. So for me, that's absolutely my vote.
I agree, and I think that is the one I believe of all the ones that are listed, that will probably win. Best visual effects: Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, The Creator. Now, the interesting thing about the visual effects thing is that Oppenheimer got nominated here, but it was left out of the pre-nominations for the Oscars for best visual effects, which people were upset about.
Yeah,
but they made
that.
Well, they made a big deal when they were promoting the movie that it didn't really have a ton of visual effects shots in it.
Well, they were saying promoting it as having 0, right?
0. So like then I wasn't too shocked that the Oscars left them out of that, but other nomination bodies didn't. So I mean, I guess
that's nice at least.
Yeah, I guess it depends. Let's see. Best horror feature: Evil Dead Rise, Knock at the Cabin, Megan, No One Will Save You, Scream 6, and Talk to Me. Throwing all my weight behind Talk to Me, even though I did love some of the other ones in here.
I agree too. I saw that list actually earlier, and Talk to Me was the clear standout. Most of the ones that I've seen, I think there's 2 that I didn't see. No One Will Save You, and I forget what the other one is there that I didn't see. Megan.
Megan. You saw Knock at the Cabin, right?
Yeah, exactly. Of those other ones, most of although I enjoyed them overall, like most were like slight disappointments. So Talk to Me was one that I thoroughly loved. So
yeah, agreed. Best first feature. I love that they like a few of these people give this out for best first movie. 1001, which I hear is really good. I haven't seen it yet. Joyride. I just saw that 2 weeks ago. It was very funny. Past Lives is another thing I haven't seen, but it's a big award season movie too.
Yeah, on my list.
Fair Play. So I'm glad I got a nod somewhere for best first feature. And American Fiction, which I also haven't seen. Also heard really good things about it as well.
Yep. Saw the trailer ahead of something recently, and I thought it was really slick.
Best animated feature: The Boy and the Heron, Elemental, Nimona, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and Suzumi. Assuming Spider-Man. Well, I'm not gonna assume it's
Boy and the
Spider-Man.
Heron, I think will be a good.
I just saw. Yeah,
it's
it won some
heralded
stuff
as
today,
Hayao
too.
Miyazaki's big swan song. I think that is, if not for Spider-Man being as amazing as it was, I would almost say it's a lock. But
yeah,
I guess time will tell.
All right, here's some of the bigger ones. Best Original Screenplay: Air, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, Past Lives, Saltburn, and The Holdovers.
Okay.
Good little group there. Adapted Screenplay: American Fiction, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Okay. Oppenheimer, I think, is in the bag.
Yeah, I feel like it is too. Killers of the Flower Moon, I feel like it's real competition there, but
yeah.
Or maybe Poor Things. I don't know. I have to see Poor Things too, so we'll see. Best Director. So this the Hollywood Creative Alliance does up to 10 directors. So this was a big this was a controversial choice amongst some of the people. I've only saw it on Twitter from other people that are in the group that thought that's too many, and then some people were like, it's perfect because more to choose from. I don't know where you stand on 10 directors, but I thought it was fine. But Alexandra Payne for The Holdovers, Ben Affleck for Air, Bradley Cooper for Maestro, Celine Song for Past Life, also her first movie. So
that's
on that.
Quite the
Christopher Nolan, Oppenheimer, Cord Jefferson for American Fiction, Emerald Fennell for Saltburn, Greta Gerwig for Barbie, Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon, and I do not know, is it Yorgos Lanthimos?
Yeah,
Lanthimos. There we go for Poor Things. So a lot of great people in that category, though.
I really want to throw him right behind Nolan because he just needs that recognition. But that is a strong year and a lot of competition he's up against. Marty, I think too, will be another big one.
Yeah. Best Cast Ensemble: Air, Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, The Color Purple, and The Holdovers. In the acting categories, Best Supporting Actress: America Ferrera for Barbie. This is one of the first bigger nominations that she's gotten. She's kind of like a dark horse, but she could sneak in. She has a monologue in the movie that is her moment,
right?
That they probably would nominate her for if there's room for her. Danielle Brooks for The Color Purple. I actually just got my screener for this in my email today, but I've heard great things about the acting, especially, and not surprised to hear some of these names from The Color Purple. Divine Joy Randolph again for The Holdovers. Julianne Moore for May December. Rachel McAdams for Are You There, Margaret? Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret? And Viola Davis for Air. See, some people aren't forgetting Air. Others,
I guess not. Yeah.
I guess it depends. Best Supporting Actor: Charles Melton for May December. Coleman Domingo for The Color Purple. Dominic Sessa for The Holdovers. Good on him. First movie. Glenn Howerton for Blackberry. Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer. And Ryan Gosling for Barbie. I feel like it's another tough group as well. Best Actress: Carey Mulligan for Maestro, Emma Stone for Poor Things, Fantasia Barrino for The Color Purple, Greta Lee for Past Lives, Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon, and Margot Robbie for Barbie. Our boy Barry for Best Actor for Saltburn, Bradley Cooper for Maestro, Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer, Coleman Domingo for Rustin, Jeffrey Wright for American Fiction, and Paul Giamatti for The Holdovers. And in the Best Picture category, we have Air, American Fiction, Barbie, The Color Purple, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Okay, that must be a full 10, is it?
It's a full 10.
Yeah. Okay.
And the ceremony will take place on January 6th, Saturday at 6:30 p.m. And I will be there.
Nice.
So that's another. Again, I feel like you're hearing a lot of the same names,
yeah,
and all that. But
I even feel that way. Yeah,
you're like, cool.
But
I think it kind of puts in perspective, because National Board Review didn't really mention much about The Color Purple. Some of these other groups aren't going to mention it either. Some people haven't. Mm-hmm. Some people saw it late because I know they started doing screenings later than some of the other movies. But people that did start to see it was that is going to be one to beat. And because, especially the Academy does love a big dramatic musical. And that is what it is an adaptation of the Broadway musical. So it has a pretty big shot of claiming some big awards. The Boston Film Critics, of course, is this a little biased, but they named Best Picture The Holdovers.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
Their runners-up were The Zone of Interest and May December.
Oh.
May December is another one I think is going to like be another sneaky big awards contender too.
Yeah.
Best Director went to Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest.
Okay, it's so strange that like that particular I don't know what you call it, film association. What do you say, the Boston Film Critics? Giving so much love to The Zone of Interest, because I've seen the couple of trailers that have been released, but have heard nothing in the way of praise or criticism about it yet.
I haven't heard anything until this. So when this popped up, I was like, "Oh,
first movie in 10 years since Under the Skin, right?"
Yeah, and I need to see it. Runners up. Oh no, Zone of Interest.
Oh, okay, nice.
Runners up for Best Director: Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer and Todd Haynes for May December. Best Actor went to Paul Giamatti for The Holdovers. Runners up: Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer. Okay, that's the only one there. And then Best Actress: Lily Gladstone in Killers of the Flower Moon. I think you're seeing a trend with her. Yeah, she seems to be the front runner.
Yeah, I got a lot of momentum going into the bigger awards.
Runners up: Emma Stone for Poor Things and Natalie Portman for May December. Best Supporting Actor: Ryan Gosling for Barbie. That's his first significant win of the awards. He's been nominated, had one. Runners up: Charles Melton for May December, Mark Ruffalo for Poor Things, Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer. Best Supporting Actress: Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. There were no runners up, so I guess they thought she was like the one to beat. Best Ensemble went to Oppenheimer, and runners up were Asteroid City, The Iron Claw, and Killers of the Flower Moon. Best Adapted Screenplay: Jonathan Glazer for Zone of Interest. Runners up: Kelly Freeman Craig for Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, and Eric Roth and Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon. Best Original Screenplay: David, can you see that the Boston Film Critics really love The Holdovers? David Hemmingson for The Holdovers won Best Original Screenplay. Runners up were Sammy Birch for May December, and also Nicole Helleficiner for You Hurt My Feelings, which is a movie with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I did not see, but
I not even heard of that one.
Best New Filmmaker: Celine Song for Past Lives. Cool, nice. Best Cinematography went to The Taste of Things, and Oppenheimer was even a runner-up. Poor Things and Asteroid City. Best Original Score: Robbie Robertson for Killers of the Flower Moon, and runner-up Mika Levi for The Zone of Interest. And Best Animated Film: The Boy and the Heron. Runners-up: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Robot Dreams, and The Peasants. I haven't heard of The Peasants or Robot Dreams. So that was the Boston Film Critics. I'm not surprised that they threw their weight behind the New England movie.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. Well, I mean, you got a movie in there directed by a very famous Bostonite with Ben Affleck and Air. So that's
true. That's really true.
I mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't even know if Bostonite is a word. I don't know if that's what are they Bostoners? I don't know. But that's what I'm going.
It sounded. You said it so convincingly. I'm just going to go with it.
Okay, well, thanks. But Ben Affleck,
it's legit. Now the Los Angeles Film Critics Association, they just finished revealing all of their winners. Best Picture: Zone of Interest.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no. Runner-up: Oppenheimer. Best Director: Jonathan Glazer, The Zone of Interest. Runner-up: Yorgos Lanthimos for Poor Things. Best Leading Performance. So they don't separate theirs by male or female. It's gender neutral. So
that's different.
Sandra Huller for Anatomy of a Fall and The Zone of Interest. She's in both. And Emma Stone and Emma Stone for Poor Things. Runners up were Andrew Scott for All of Us Strangers, which I heard is also really good, and Jeffrey Wright for American Fiction. Supporting performances: Rachel McAdams, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, and Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. Runners up. So this was controversial. They put Lily Gladstone in supporting for Killers of the Flower Moon.
Ooh,
and she was a runner-up, and then also another runner-up was Ryan Gosling, Barbie. How do you feel about that? Because there are some people that are like, they determine supporting by like a few different things. It's either you're not really a lead unless your character drives the story, and then sometimes they'll say that you're supporting. Since you're really the only lead supporting actress, you're supporting the lead actor in the story.
Right.
Like Viola Davis famously did that for Fences, where it was only two leads, but she went supporting, and that's how she won. Of course, she was great in it, but there was less competition in supporting that year.
I think that's an interesting discussion to be had, because I was recently watching some YouTubers' takes on this, and he was breaking down different examples of this throughout like recent memory of actors and actresses putting their weight behind a supporting or a lead category based on their performance. And this is something that I had never really considered before, but I don't know. I feel like there should be criteria that should be met for you to go into either category, lead or supporting that. And because I feel like it's a little bit like, I think there's something to be said about like, if you have a clear leading performance, but you feel like your best chances of winning the award are by going into an arguably weaker category, like supporting, is that fair? Yeah. I don't know. I think there should be criteria. That's just my uninformed opinion based on the first time being asked this, but do you think differently, or do you think it doesn't matter?
I think I agree with you. And then in the case of the Los Angeles Film Critics, I think they looked at it and thought and felt that she was more supporting than lead, and gave it to, and made her a runner-up. She didn't even win.
Right.
But she's the female lead.
She's in the movie quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And she doesn't have it's not a small amount of screen time. I would even say it's supporting screen time. So like I would consider her lead. I mean, I know agree. That for the Oscars, and all the major awards, I know she pushed herself for lead, so that's where they're going for it. But yeah, a lot of people were complaining about this online today, that the Los Angeles Film Critics viewed her as supporting rather than a lead. I mean, probably feeling that Leonardo DiCaprio is the lead and he drives the story, but I don't know.
Well, if different critic associations have different criteria, what they consider a lead or supporting, I'm fine with that. It doesn't have to be standardized throughout the industry, but I think that each individual association that's giving out awards should have clearly defined criteria. And, obviously, if that is the case, different performances might fall into different categories based on that criteria. But I don't necessarily think it needs to be standardized, but I think there should be some guidelines. Like if you have an hour plus, well, I guess in the case of Lily Gladstone, haven't counted her minutes on screen, but I'm guessing it's quite significant. Nothing about it, even the performance, feels like it's a supporting. Yeah, it's arguably supporting Leo's character, but it's very much the female lead.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
I don't, doesn't rug me the one way or another. Yeah, exactly. But interesting discussion to be had for sure. I guess I'll be interested to see if there's any standouts come the Academy Awards nominations.
Yeah,
but
that'd be interesting. Yeah, for sure. And and then tomorrow, we'll see. I'm sure she's gonna be in the lead actress for a drama.
I'm sure she
category.
Will be too,
yeah. Best screenplay: Andrew Hay for All of Us Strangers. Runner up: Sammy Birch for May December. Best cinematography: Robbie Ryan for Poor Things. Runner up: Rodrigo Prieto for Killers of the Flower Moon and Barbie. Best editing went to Anatomy of a Fall. Runner up: All of Us Strangers. Well, I guess what you're seeing here, like they're really spreading it out across a lot of different movies.
Yeah,
like different, like all these like different bodies are. Like I remember when we were going into this, I was like, I feel like it's going to be a Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer kind of main race, and that seemed like it's kind of changed a little bit. I mean, their names are still definitely much in it, but there's all these other smaller movies that seem like they're
which I love not seeing just a mainstream race, because there are so many other fantastic like smaller and even independent movies that definitely deserve their consideration. So that's great on these associations for giving them recognition, because it's not all, it'd be boring to hear the same huge juggernaut movies at all the award seasons or shows. So yeah,
I agree.
Love to see Jonathan Glazer getting love for Zone of Interest. I didn't expect to hear that mentioned, so that's awesome.
And now I want to like track it down and watch it.
I have a feeling it's going to be divisive. I've read a couple early reviews that say nothing happens in it and it's boring and dull. I mean, obviously there will be people that feel that way about it, but I'm very much excited for what that movie will be. Just knowing what I know about the premise, it seems dark. So
yeah. Oh, and judging how most people kind of judge movies like that or Poor Things. I was encouraged by the cinema score for Poor Things this weekend because they got an A-.
Oh,
so
okay.
usually movies like that, when it's like when regular people see them, they're like, what was that? And
Yes.
I was encouraged by the A-. I was like, oh, like this might have more like appeal than maybe we thought. Yeah. That's good for that though, because
definitely
I hate when that happens. We're like, yeah, I love the movie, and it's like D.
Have you seen
like, oh.
Have you seen any of Yorgos Lanthimos' other films?
They're all two of them are weird.
I think they're all weird.
Well, the one with the most mass appeal is The Favorite. That kind of seems like, oh, anyone can watch that and be like, all right, yeah, but even that, I mean, they're all kind of offbeat.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar, his other movies are The Killing of a Sacred Deer, starring our boy Barry too, in a great role, and then The Lobster, which is hilarious. That movie is so awkwardly funny. It's amazing. But Colin Farrell gives a great performance in that movie too. But Yorgos Lanthimos really, in terms of like original filmmaking and storytelling, I think is in a league of his own right now.
Yeah. And like, he's very much like what you when you see that name, you're like, what you're getting. So if you're going into one of his movies, so it was funny. Like when I saw The Favorite, I was going in like, oh, it's going to be just as weird but fun as these other two movies, right? And then when it was kind of like normal by his standards, I was like, oh, all right, yeah. But I think you go in knowing like, oh, this might be a little offbeat and weird, but you like it because that's just who he is.
He does not make movies for the casual or mainstream audience by any means.
And it seems like he's found like a muse in like Emma Stone, because like she's gonna be in his next film that he's doing too, which is really cool to hear. I mean,
nice.
Apparently, I mean, he got her a Best Actress nomination. Or what? Can't remember if it was Best Actress or Supporting Actress for The Favorite. But
I can't remember either. Yeah, there was a few performances nominated.
Olivia Colman ended up winning for that.
Oh, did she? Okay, nice.
Yeah. And I can't remember. I couldn't remember if I think she won lead, but I can't remember if Emma Stone was also in lead or if she went supporting. But either way, she was nominated for it.
Right.
So the Atlanta film critics loved Oppenheimer.
Okay, nice.
They named it their best film, and their top films for the year were Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, The Holdovers, Past Lives, Barbie, May December, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, and Poor Things. Lead actor went to Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer. Lead actress Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon. Best supporting actor, it was a tie between Robert Downey Jr. Between Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer and Ryan Gosling for Barbie. Best supporting actress, Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. I feel like the Oscar is like hers, dude.
It looks that way, yeah.
Best ensemble cast, Oppenheimer. Best director, Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer.
Nice.
Best screenplay, Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer. Best documentary, still a Michael J. Fox story. Best international feature, Anatomy of a Fall. Best animated film, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Best cinematography, finally one for Oppenheimer.
Okay, beautiful.
And best original score, Oppenheimer. And since they don't get enough credit, and they should, best stunt work, John Wick Chapter 4.
Okay, awesome. Love to see a stunt work award. That's pretty sweet. I know there's been a lot of conversation in the last few years about adding an Academy Award for stunt work. I think that is an amazing idea.
I'm surprised it's taken so long to even get one in. Like that we
for
don't
it to be a conversation, right? Yeah. Agreed.
And then there's only a couple more of these. Washington area film critics today named their best picture American Fiction. The other nominees were Barbie, The Holdovers, Oppenheimer, and Past Lives. Best director, they chose Christopher Nolan for best director. Best actor, Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer. Best actress, Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon. Best supporting actor, Charles Melton for May December. Best supporting actress, again, Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. Best original screenplay, Celine Song for Past Lives. Best adapted screenplay, Core Jefferson for American Fiction. Best animated feature, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And best international feature went to Anatomy of a Fall.
Okay. Yeah, that movie, Anatomy of a Fall, I'm expecting a lot of love for as well. I mean, got the coveted Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival earlier this year too. So I was expecting to see, I think seems like some mainstream appeal has wavered since because it came out so much earlier in the year. But I was expecting sort of like another like round like Parasite at the 2019 Oscars, where we see like a foreign feature get a lot of love and maybe some wins. But
we'll
see.
At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if it pulled a Parasite and was nominated for Best International Film, and then also pulled a Best Picture nomination.
Right.
Too.
I'd love to see, at least some noms for it.
In the case of like Parasite, I ended up winning both of those, which is I'm kind of thinking that's where that's going with that movie, that it could actually pull, depending on how many movies they nominate. If they do a full
team. I think this is a year where you can go 8 to 10 easily.
Yeah. This is probably someone online was saying that they think this is like one of the better award seasons that we had. It's crazy because we almost didn't have it because of the strike, but
true.
But they think this is like one of the best award seasons that we've had in a really long time, just because it seems like the love is being spread amongst some big movies and some like smaller like independent movies.
Right,
which
it's the rise of the indie movie over the last couple of years, man, for sure, which is amazing.
Yeah. Agreed. And actually, that was the last one. I thought there was one more. So that is the last one until the Golden Globes, which you'll be able to hear our reactions to those nominations in front of our Home Alone Merry Bingemas episode, because we don't want to leave those out. That is one of the bigger award shows of the season. It'll be interesting. The Golden Globes, they pull some weird stuff sometimes because it's the wacky award show of the bunch.
Definitely,
I mean, it's the one where you can drink and get drunk at. So yeah, they get really special, and they're known for like wanting celebrities there, movie stars. So sometimes you'll hear nominations that are like you just wanted them to show up.
Yeah,
like there's a period where like Julia Roberts would just get them for random stuff. Not that she's a bad actress by any means, but she just pop up in something and they're like, oh, they just wanted her there.
I've only watched a couple of Golden Globes in my day, but I might stick around depending on the nominations. I'll probably carve some time out to watch them this year.
They're more fun than the Oscars. I mean, the Oscars are fun, but the Oscars have like a reputation for being kind of stuffy because it's like a formal event.
I can see the dynamic being much different.
Golden Globes are at like cocktail tables and they're all drinking champagne and it's like a little more loose. So so it comes off a little bit more fun. But
nice.
But yeah, we'll reveal those to you during our Home Alone episode. But for now, we get to talk about the 40th anniversary of Christine. It's a 1983 American supernatural horror film directed by John Carpenter and starring Keith Gordon, John Stockwell, Alexandra Paul, Robert Prosky, and Harry Dean Stanton. Written by Bill Phillips and based on Stephen King's 1983 novel of the same name, the movie follows the changes in the lives of Arnie Cunningham, his friends, his family, and his teenage enemies after he buys a classic red and white 1958 Plymouth Fury named Christine, a car that seems to have a mind of its own and a jealous, possessive personality, which has a bad influence on Arnie. This movie was released on December 9th, 1983 to generally positive reviews from critics, and it grossed $21 million on a $10 million budget, which is pretty good for 1983 and a horror movie in 1983. I'll save some of this other stuff for the end because I was surprised, not related to like the release, but like some future stuff that they were talking about. But yeah, you said you were fresh off a rewatch you did in September.
Yeah, just in the vein of spooky season, I had seen Christine for the first time. It only was maybe the year previous or maybe 2 years before, but semi recently, and didn't really pay attention that I'd had this, milestone anniversary later in the year. Otherwise, I probably would have saved that watch for now, but I threw it on late September as my second ever watch of it because I really, really was impressed with it the first time around. Cam put me on it. And just was thrilled with it. I love John Carpenter, and this is one that I had not seen of his, or I'd only seen it once until this year. So I wanted to get that rewatch in, and I had absolutely no issue with getting it in, even though it had been a couple months earlier. I really enjoyed this, what was now my third rewatch of it. But yeah, Christine is great. Like I mentioned too, one of 8 movies he put out in that decade of the 80s, which is just insane to think about. But yeah, he squeezed this one out in between. Right after he was coming right after The Thing, and I'm trying to think. I don't know if I know what came after this one.
I can look it up for you and see what he did after. It's interesting too because we love The Thing now, and it's considered a classic. Not only for practical effects, but it's also considered like one of his best movies. Either you're naming Halloween or The Thing, but the thing flops when it came out in theaters. It did not make any money.
No,
and I read an interview looking up stuff for Christine where he took the directing job for Christine because he felt like he needed to for his career because he was coming off a really big flop in The Thing, and he was offered Christine early on, and then he was actually prepping to do Firestarter, another Stephen King adaptation. But then they saw how The Thing did in theaters, and then they kind of took Firestarter away from him, and so he had time to do this one. So he, this was not a passion project for him,
more of a job.
Yeah, this was a job. But he, today thinks much more fondly of it today. Nice. I think maybe he did at the time where it was like he did mention that it wasn't a hard movie to do. It was fairly straightforward. It's always interesting when someone talks about movies that you kind of really like, and he was like, yeah, it was kind of like whatever.
Right.
But it wasn't like Halloween for him or anything like that.
Right.
This wouldn't felt like, and I guess you can kind of tell because this wasn't like, it feels like he was more of a hired hand than something that he kind of developed on his own because he's directing something that's adapted for someone else's work,
right?
And
even though no writing credit on it,
right? And even though the same is the case for like The Thing because that's a remake, but I feel like
one that he loved, he
loved, right? So there was more passion involved in that. But with Christine, it was like it was a job.
I gotta say his score in this movie lends a lot of his personality to this movie where it makes me feel like it is truly a John Carpenter movie, and I don't look at, even though that might have been the case when he was making it, he took it and approached it as a job, something he needed to do while he was doubting his future in the movie making industry. I feel like his direction combined with his score just makes it such a quintessential John Carpenter movie. It's got his fingerprints all over it, regardless of how he felt when he was making it. It's one of my favorites, and I know that doesn't mean anything. I love John Carpenter. All of his movies are among my favorites, but it just has a special place.
Is he in your like top
directing? Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And there's still a few
like top 10.
Man, I might go more than that.
You might
be like. I haven't sat down and really broken that.
I was going to say top 5.
I'm thinking about it, but. He'd be up there depending on the day, but top 10 easily. I love John Carpenter.
Well, Jackson kind of mentioned just his run in the 80s, but I'll just start with what kicked him off. I mean, he had 2 movies before this, but Halloween in 78, and then 80 he does The Fog, 81 he does Escape from New York, 82 he does The Thing, 83 he does Christine, 84 he does Starman, 86 he took 2 years, it did Big Trouble in Little China, in 87 he does Prince of Darkness, 88 he does They Live. So he kind of insane. And and it's interesting about Prince of Darkness and They Live is that Universal Pictures was like, hey, we know we gave you a hard time because The Thing flops, and that was one of their movies. So they invited him back to do more movies, which is good.
Nice.
But that, no matter how much, whatever you think of the quality of his 80s run, and I've seen all those movies. And
I haven't seen Starman. That's the only one I haven't seen.
It's fun. It's pretty cheap.
I know it's fondly remembered of him. Yeah.
But he had a really good run in the 80s.
That's what I'm saying. He led the 80s.
And I didn't really think about how good the run was because I don't think I thought about those movies in terms of when they came out. I've always just thought about like them as just individual movies I've liked by him, but like not really thinking about the succession of when they came out and how close together and just I mean, I think maybe even not so much then, but I think if you were a cinephile now and you're looking at that, like these are probably all cult favorites at this point in their own right, and probably more beloved today than they were then.
Absolutely. He was really a guy that was making movies that obviously are of their time but didn't find appreciation until much later. I'm sure that was the case for most of them. I'm sure some received acclaim, but not necessarily the box office. And I'm glad that he's still around to see how his movies have been received over time because he's, I think he's sneaky good. Like a lot of people don't really consider how great and how impactful his movies have been. But he's absolutely one of the greats.
I agree. I think it might of course we don't know him personally, but it seems like he would feel good about how these movies are received now, because I always think it's crazy, because I love The Fog, for instance. I think it gets better every time I watch it.
Right.
And he kind of has, like, I think he thinks it's a good little ghost story, but he has his own issues with it, and like it could have been scarier here, and he could have done this differently.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of people in recent years, the more they watch it, the more they appreciate it, and it's in like their top level, like John Carpenter movies. And I think he's seeing that a lot with like his movies now, where so many people are reevaluating them today in a much more positive light.
Right.
So I mean, I have to feel good as a filmmaker, even if you get the recognition like years
at
later. At
least you get it.
Yeah, exactly. In the case of this one, I know you like you said you came off to watch in September. Well, what was your thoughts? Can you remember when you first saw it?
Well, what really stuck? I think the effects in particular. This is another. He's known for employing incredible practical effects in his movies. This is no exception, especially coming right. It would have been hard to top The Thing from the year previous, and I don't think this does that in terms of like how impressive they are, but they are absolutely impressive for different reasons. And this movie, obviously, the effects are coming down to, the vehicle, like Christine herself, and the stuff he does with it. But in that famous scene where she rebuilds herself, is like such an impressive sequence.
Yeah, that's like my favorite scene in the movie, dude.
Absolutely, me too. One of probably a couple that are standouts, but that scene, like, it's pretty obvious like how it was filmed when you're looking at it, but it comes across like so impressively and looks just such a badass scene, and probably took up a fair amount of the budget too, I imagine. But there's a couple of sequences you see, like that's really Christine's time to shine is in that scene. But there's a couple times where she repairs herself like off camera and in the dark, clouded by shadow. Which
also is like effective. Really, is also effective.
Definitely.
Like it's like the one like towards the end, or I guess like the climax of the movie, where it's been trying to like run over Lee, the Alexandra Paul, and it's been banged up, and then like it kind of pulls off into the shadows, and then when it reemerges again, it's completely brand new.
It's so cool,
which is such a tiny little trick, right? You're just like, oh, let's go dark for a second, and then like but you're just like, and that just gives you an even bigger impression, like this thing is like virtually indestructible, it seems like. So I do love that you do get that big transformation, like regeneration moment that you see, but I also like the one that like is kind of just done off camera in the shadows. I think they both really work really
absolutely
well.
But that's the effects stood out to me upon seeing it, which comes as no surprise. And I guess I didn't really go into my first watch of Christine expecting like an effects heavy or impressive effects from this movie. I just thought, I thought this car would be running people over for the entire duration, and it does do a fair amount of that. Even the effects, like with the car being shrouded in fire in that one scene when it blows up, and seeing that gas station actually being blown up looks awesome on camera. Just you don't see that stuff as much anymore. But the performances too, particularly from Keith Gordon, who plays Arnie, like I think he plays more convincingly a nerd and like sort of like the down on his luck high school loser.
See, I was going to ask you that too, because I was like, I thought, I think he is more convincing as a nerd, but I think he does a good. I believe the transformation into kind of like cocky asshole.
Yes. But
I think, but I agree with you though. He does as a nerd. More convincing.
I think a big part of his transition into the more confident, suave, cocky persona is Christine's influence on him is very present, and you can tell that there's something sinister going on that really elevates that performance. I don't think if there was nothing like Christine influencing him, if he was just had a snap of a finger switch into this nerd to this more like suave, popular, charismatic person, I wouldn't have bought it so much. But you can tell that he's being influenced. There's this sinister aspect of his life that is making him this way, and I think that helps that performance a lot. But John Stockwell too, as his best friend Dennis, is I feel honestly he doesn't have as much to do in this movie, but he's a convincing, likable character too.
Yeah. This was a kind of the period where there's like a few horror movies where there's a less popular lead, and then they happen to have like a best like jock friend,
right?
Which like A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 does that too. Like Mark Patton is like kind of nerdy, and then his best friend is athletic and better looking and all that stuff. It's funny. It's like in most the hierarchy of high school films, usually this would be the case. But in 80s high school movies, apparently it is. But I agree, he doesn't have as much to do. But I still liked him. I thought he's pretty likable.
Yeah,
and you can tell that he cares about his friend too.
Yes.
On top of all that, and can see you gotta, even though it's gradual, this kind of like negative change in him. And I, and I actually liked Alexandra Paul too, even though she was not, she was a model, but this was her first movie, so she was not an actress by any means. And I read an interview where she said that she doesn't like her performance in it. She thinks that she needed more direction as like a first time actress, but I think she's fine, in the movie. Think she, not like it's like a transformative performance or anything, but it does the job.
She does the job. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Movie doesn't ask much of her.
Right. Also, by the way, 15% of the budget was just on cars. By the end of filming, all but 2 were destroyed.
Yeah, $1.5 million, I think, was the breakdown of the $10 million budget, and there was something like 24 cars, and you hard to tell how many you're really seeing on screen because you get different cars, and depending on the sequence, they're in various state of dismemberment. But I never thought it was anything like that high, for sure. But when Christine is like fully at her top of her game, like in pristine condition, like that is a beautiful ride, and you can see why.
Great looking car.
Yeah, Stephen King chose particularly the 58 Plymouth Fury as the model because I guess in his eyes at the time the novel was being written, it was sort of a car forgotten by history. And after Christine, particularly the movie had come out because it was the same year as the book was published. It like exploded in popularity again, and now it's like one of the more recognizable vehicles in like pop culture, I suppose, or maybe in movie history, maybe.
And this is crazy. Stephen King was such a hot commodity back then that the movie went into production like mere weeks after the book was published.
Right.
So you kind of hear that a little bit now, where certain studios will buy the film rights to either, it's usually more established writers. They'll buy like the rights to their next novel, not even knowing what it might be,
which is such a gamble.
And Stephen King was that guy then, and that's crazy that they were like, hey, like just give us whatever you got. And like that's
pretty bankable writer, though. I don't blame them for being all in on this. And it's funny because like I feel like in the hands of many other authors, like a killer car on paper sounds ridiculous, but he just adds his touch that makes this movie so much more than that. It's really I was describing this to my parents earlier. I have dinner with them every Sunday and was just there always asking what's going on with the podcast, just checking in. And I mentioned that we were covering Christine for its 40th anniversary, and even though they had not seen it, it was more of this conversation with my mom. She knew exactly what I was talking about. She goes, the movie about the car? I was like, yeah, exactly. Like 40 years later, I know she has not even seen it, and she knows what this movie is. Just a testament to Stephen King and obviously the movie itself.
Yeah, I also think the poster might be pretty iconic too. It's a nice looking. I kind of wish I owned it.
I wish I owned it too. My DVD cover isn't. It's a cool cover.
Oh, that one,
on fire. But I like the post, like the more blue toned. Poster.
The one that you posted for the 40th anniversary. Yeah, that's a great looking,
super cool
movie poster.
Agreed.
It really sells exactly what the movie is without like doing too much, but it looks really cool.
What do you think of Christine as a character and how Carpenter sort of like was able to do with the car what he's able to do? Do you feel like it's more of like, what do you think about how Christine's handled, I guess? Is I convinced?
As I watched it today, I think it's been like over 10 years since I watched it last. So I had like no fresh knowledge of the movie. So this almost felt like I was watching it for the first time.
Right. I love that.
What I got from it as I was watching, as it moved along, Christine felt like a fully fleshed out character of its own.
Agreed.
And then like I never got the impression or thinking like, oh, there's like a stunt driver in the car, like manipulating the car. I was able to suspend disbelief enough as like a movie watcher to be like, that thing is alive and with a mind of its own. And that is a testament to a few things, I guess. I mean, I don't, if it's just the way that he chooses to shoot the vehicle or like there was just a lot of different things that Carpenter did that made that car feel more than just a machine. Like it was definitely, it felt like it was a living, breathing thing. And like it also like it has personality too. Like I love like how the radio is kind of like an indication of like, you know, something's about to happen. And also in a really funny, sly way, a depiction of the car's mood.
Very much so. And how accurate the songs that she plays are to the scenario, what she's trying to say, I find honestly like darkly comical. Like the scene where someone, I think it's someone, one of the bullies is trying to access the car. Or actually, it might even be Dennis at first. He breaks in and he's trying to get in. And then it plays that song. It's like, you keep on knocking, but you can't come in. It's so slick and so funny. And there's plenty of scenes where she's using the radio.
The one where it's like trying to choke out Lee in the car. It's just like, you could tell what its personality is. And even like when Artie dies at the end, I feel like what the song that they choose to play. It's almost like the car is like mourning, like it probably mourned the loss of Artie in some way.
I love too how you see the headlights go out as Arnie dies. Like they're so connected, right?
I was like, oh, like it wasn't just really using and manipulating him. It felt like it grew this kind of like
I feel like it's a symbiotic relationship where they need each other. Like the car had fallen into disrepair and was ignored and just ready to be sold. And then along comes Arnie, who sees the beauty in Christine and is able to restore her. And they, like you said, like they have this bond together and they really are influencing each other, I suppose. Or more like Christine, I guess, was more bad from the start and corrupts Arnie. But I think Arnie also plays a part in, he allows this to happen to him.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think a thing that goes a long way to making the car feel like it's a person, because that's how I viewed it. Like it was like a living, breathing thing. Is the fact that it was just always listening to, because like the fact that Lee kind of was like voicing like, I don't feel right about your car, like just voicing her concerns. And the first time she voices those concerns is when the car is like, all right, well, we got to take her out now. Like she's a liability. So I thought that kind of stuff was cool too. I think kind of some people might think it plays fast and loose with the rules of like how much it can do and how much it understands and all that. But I don't know. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, I still think that like he does a good job of making you feel like this is not just a car. Right. It feels like its own character.
I think he also gets to that right out of the gate. Like, remember like watching it yesterday, like before anything's even on screen, you hear Christine revving. Like that's how the movie opens up, with the black screen. You hear Christine revving up, and then you get her like birth, if you will, on the assembly line to like the song Bad to the Bone. It's such perfect soundtrack to the movie. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it couldn't have picked a better song to fit. And then I think too, the shots of Christine going down the assembly line, you literally just get the camera's angled at some obscure part of her just sort of following the assembly line workers, but you get all these different shots from different angles of Christine, like through her rearview mirror, her side mirrors, just over the fender. It really feels like you're watching it from her perspective, and it makes her feel like a character in the movie rather than just a car.
I agreed. What do you think about changing the stuff from the source material? Like they said that in King's novel, it's made clear that the car was possessed by the evil spirit of its previous owner, whereas the film version of the story shows that the evil spirit of the car manifested itself on the day it was built. Do you really think it matters? Or
I mean, I think to Stephen King fans, maybe I wouldn't like blame anybody for being put off by the changes to the novel, or to the book rather. I personally have no gripes with it because I haven't read the novel, and I do like the liberties of from what I know anyway from the book. I think the liberties taken in the movie work for me. I like the idea more that like Christine's evil is present from the beginning and it's unexplained. I like that ambiguity. And I also think it pays enough respects to the novel that it includes, the lore of her previous owner and dying in the car. And he's mentioned by name. It's just not necessarily, I even think there is actually, saying this now, an argument to be made that the previous owner, I can't remember, something LeBay, is
Roland D. LeBay.
Yeah. I think he is, you can hear him, like you see a little bit of him later. Like Arnie sorts to adopt a little bit of the mannerisms that LeBay's brother, who sells him the car, like he uses some of that language, particularly he refers to people as shitters, which the LeBay's brother did. I feel like you sort of get a little bit of that spirit. I think there's a case to be made anyway, but I think the ambiguity goes a long way for Christine.
Yeah, I appreciate the ambiguity too. I mean, I think both versions of that movie would work. I mean, it would make sense.
Yeah.
All right, that both angles make sense, but I do kind of like that you don't really know exactly what kind of the fact that it kind of just manifests it in itself seems like it's creepier a little bit than like it being like, the previous owner, it's just the evil spirit of the owner who died in it or whatever.
I like to compare it to like Michael Myers, for instance. Like, you don't need to know. I think it's creepier that Michael Myers is like Christine is just possessed by some evil, and it is the embodiment of evil. It doesn't need to have necessarily come from something else. That's what kind of makes it scary, that it could be anything.
I agree. I also found it interesting because it felt like I was watching for the first time. I forgot how weird the relationship is between Arnie and his parents. How completely he feels very coddled. Like it seems like he's sheltered in a way, and like they're very controlling. Like the fact that they won't let him even keep the car at the house. It's just it just makes it went a long way to making that character really interesting, because like seeing what he was like before the change starts to happen, I guess you need to see how different he really was before he gets the car, and kind of how beaten down. I mean, the whole thing with him and his friend are talking about like how this is the year they're going to get him laid. Like he hasn't, he's and all this other stuff. Like he clearly is like a nerd and not popular. He gets bullied, as we see early on in the movie. By the way, I was trying to see if I buy them being in high school. The bullies in particular, particularly the lead one, looks way older than senior in high school. But I guess that was I guess that was the 80s, and they did that a lot.
I'm curious to know, like, in casting, how old that actor was. I actually didn't get that impression that he was much older than an 80s high school senior would have looked at the time, but that's because I'm of a complete different time. So I always find that could just be a symptom of casting in 80s movies or 80s set movies. So, but it didn't look out of place to me because that just felt like the norm. But even looking back at like my parents' high school photos and stuff, like everyone just looks older than they did nowadays. I feel like people just get more youthful. But it never like bothered me. I have heard it brought up and mentioned by other people commenting on the movie. But at least it didn't do anything for me. But I think the character, like how like that trio of bullies are like what they're going about at the beginning of the movie. I think it is, they play convincing high school bullies. Like I enjoyed their performance, Buddy Repperton in particular. When he gets in that scuffle with the teacher too. And
I was so surprised that he'd even try to back down, and he did try to fake being like, oh, I didn't have a knife, I don't know what you're talking about. But once he realized he's caught, and he just basically pops off at the mouth and basically threatens the teacher too. I was like, this guy has like no limits whatsoever. I guess too, they have to be like so mean, irreprehensible that you want them to get their comeuppance. I mean, this is also an interesting thing about this movie is you want the bad things that happen, right? Because like you want them to get their comeuppance because they're assholes, and they clearly probably not the first time they've picked on Arnie, I would imagine. And so you're like, okay, well, you don't really feel bad about them. It's just when it transfers over to like people that that he cared about at one point, that's when you're like, all right, now the car is going too far. I mean, this isn't just like a revenge fantasy like kind of story where it's like, oh, these people like treated me this way and now I'm gonna get back at them. It's it kind of starts with that and then transitions into anyone that might try to come in between. I mean, it's so interesting too, because the guy who played him said that he treated Christine like he thought of Christine as like an actual woman. And so when he would touch the car, he would like envision like spots on like a woman that he'd be touching. And I guess it works for the part because like you buy it for sure. Like his connection to the car, he definitely becomes more connected to Christine than his would-be girlfriend. So
actually perfectly documented in that scene where and actually I just rewatched the scene in anticipation for our conversation about it because I thought it was one of those scenes that's like up there with my favorites. When I think the scene, if like you YouTube it, it's like Arnie talking about love, and it's when it's like they're on their New Year, him and Dennis are on their drive on New Year's Eve. and Dennis is sort of like confronting him about what's been going on, and Arnie launches into this tangent, and he goes, "Let me tell you something about love," and he goes on, and Dennis this whole time is thinking that Arnie's talking about Lee, his girlfriend, and when he asks him, he goes, "This is how you feel about Lee." Arnie's reaction when he like laughs, like almost like as if like, could you be any more stupid? Like, no, I'm talking about Christine. No shit ever got between me and Christine. Oh, it's such a great scene for Arnie to really convey how like their bond is. And when I was describing this movie to my mom, because she was asking me a little bit about it, I kind of said, I was like, it sort of feels like a parody or a satire on a boy's love affair with his first car. And I still feel like that. And I remember my first car, I had it for 8 years and I loved my first car. And I think this movie definitely does a good job at portraying that love.
So much time and effort into it, especially the first one. Because it's like, it might be like a junky fucking hoopty, but like it's your first one.
Exactly.
So you
love it.
So you treat it with so much care. And like, actually, that is probably one of my favorite scenes too. And it's actually probably one of the better acted scenes in the movie. Like the way because like, and then also you're thinking like as his friend, if you were in that car with him, like you'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Are you serious? This whole time you've been talking about like your vehicle, like you can't like be in love with your car. Like, you don't have like,
and it sounds silly, but if you see it, you're convinced by his feelings for the car, and it's so wonderfully odd and macabre. I just love it.
He also has that major like blow up on Lee when like they discover the car after it's been like thrashed by the bullies, and she's like, who do you think did this? And she's like trying to basically console him, and then he just snaps at her, like basically, saying like, this is what she wanted. You bet you're happy. And like that's another moment of like another proving to her that like, he does not care about me more than this car. But I like there's like scenes like that I think that convey like how uncomfortably close he's become with his vehicle.
Let me ask you this, because like I feel like the more I see this movie, and this watch was my third, the more I sort of lean into this ambiguity. I don't know if I'm necessarily convinced that Christine is always acting on her own. I know that because of the blacked out windows on the car.
I'm glad you brought that up.
I feel like, and I love that we don't really know, but I don't think it's necessarily a cut and dry case of it's when Christine is hunting down the bullies or hurting people, it's necessarily just the car. I'd like to think that at least in some of those, maybe not all of them, Arnie very well could be behind the wheel. And I wanted to know what you thought about that. If you feel like it's absolutely Christine acting on her own, or if maybe it's a little bit of both.
I think it might be a little bit of both. I know that Carpenter did the whole thing with the blacked out windows because he wanted you to question whether or not he's in the car or if it is Christine that's acting on her own. And of course, during the end of the movie, when he gets flung from the car, you're like, all right, he was in it. But then there's also the question of, now I'm like kind of thinking like, okay, well, it could be Christine acting on its own. It's also Arnie could be in the car, but also it just like, it would not really be Arnie, just a possessed Arnie being in the car. Maybe like she has like so much control over him that I wonder if he doesn't even remember doing any of that stuff. If he is behind the wheel, particularly with the pursuit of like the bullies and all that, like how much of it, I think it leaves it open. Because when I was watching it today and I was like, oh, like my first thought was like, well, no, I think it's acting on its own in defense of him.
Right.
And
I think that could be the answer too.
And I think that could be the answer, but then I think I purposely throw that wrinkle at the end, having him being flung from the car. It's like, oh, well, now I have to question whether or not like this whole time was he behind the wheel of the car and they were just acting together. And both scenarios work. I mean, I think in my mind, the car acting on its own, like as a kind of like defending him, is a better like story point for me.
I agree, and I like to think that's what it is too, but I like that we don't know.
I'm like that you don't know too, but I feel like it could be one or two things, but like in my mind, like for most of that movie, it was Christine, acting out retribution on her own. And I don't know if that makes the ending a little bit more problematic, because if it kind of like, if other audience people or anyone else that watches the movie, once he's flung from that car at the end, like, do you just automatically think, oh, like, well, the whole time maybe he was
right,
behind the wheel for every kind of pursuit that Christine went on. But I don't know, for my personal viewing habits, I want to believe that it was mostly the car, which gives the car more personality. If it was just acting on its own to defend him, then,
agreed. And actually, speaking of that scene too, where he's flung, where that scene really picks up just before that, and I had completely forgotten this even after my watch in September. It still tricked me. It got me when Lee and Dennis go to the scrapyard to sort of set up this trap for Christine using like not a bulldozer, whatever it was, that tractor, to try and lure Christine in there and then run it over and crush her. But Christine is already there, hidden under some rubble, and when they are walking away,
so good.
It's not like it's kind of like an 80s version of like a jump scare, I guess, but it's like when her
but it was
lights
so
come on and she bursts out of there. Oh, it's such a good,
and it's not really with a big music stinger or anything. It's just like kind of like the lights just turn on. You're like, oh shit, like kind of like one step ahead of you guys.
And it really comes across that way, and it's slick. It even tricks the audience into thinking, Christine's one step ahead of you guys. But I really
I fucking jump when he gets flung from the car, Arnie, and then there's that one moment where he grabs her to hold on to her.
Yeah,
I jumped there too. I kind of, because I hadn't seen it in forever, and I forgot that was there, and I was like, "Fuck, that was by myself." Thank God when it happened. But also, that I love that you brought that. That reveal is like so cool because it's just so like stealth and like such an easy like trick that I don't think a lot of filmmakers today even try to use to set up a scare like that.
Right.
Because like if it had been any movie made today, there'd be like a big like burn before it happens.
100%. It's such an overused trope. I was curious too if there's any like favorite standout sequences to you in the movie.
Well, I do love when the car first rebuilds itself.
Yeah.
And I love because it's such a cool like almost like this like communication between them, and when he says like show me, and it's almost like she's talking to him without really even having to talk to him.
I know.
It was such a cool like moment, I think, in the movie. That's why it's probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I liked I love that you mentioned the one in the car with Arnie and Dennis. I thought there's a lot of good character moments in the movie. Like that's why it's like said earlier, like I feel like the script itself is a little deeper than it probably even should be for a movie of this type. And just like I think they do a really good job at establishing Arnie's character to take you on this kind of journey with him. So you kind of buy the transformation and what it does to him, how it corrupts him. And then also these people, like these two people in his lives that want to kind of help him because like they're his friends and they want to they remember the guy that he was, and like they even though they can't quite explain what is changing in him. I mean, and they do kind of allude to like when they find out what happened in the car before he got it. It seems like even if he's not fully believing that there might be some supernatural thing going, didn't still think it's weird that like someone died in that car, and like there's that whole kind of like bad juju around it. So even it that's what I liked about it too, is like even though there is this like kind of supernatural angle to it, the characters don't really have to buy into the car is possessed. Just that overall feeling that something is just off. I actually bought, and I don't think a lot of movies can really sell that well sometimes, where it's just like, oh, we're I think that's what most normal people would react to. You wouldn't think that, my best friend bought a car that's like possessed by an evil spirit, but you would be like, something is amiss, basically.
Definitely.
Another sequence too is I love when he's chasing that one bully in particular, and he goes in like the alleyway.
And
it just squeezes in.
I think that's my favorite scene. Actually, is that whole chase from the get go. Like that's like a 4 or 5 minute sequence. I think that's what I had in mind when I asked you the question. I love that entire, and John's score in there, like that big synthesizer heavy, which is like his famous instrument. That's like one of the moments where I feel like if you didn't even see anything else in the movie and you were just you're channel scrolling and the scene comes on, you're like, I'm in a John Carpenter movie right now. That's one of the big scenes for me.
Yeah, that whole pursuit of the bullies is so cool because it's like they're in the car and you just see the headlights in back of them. You're like, oh, yep, you know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And this is the whole stuff at the gas station. And then I don't even want to say that the car is really chasing Buddy. It's not really like a high speed chase when it's on fire. He's pursuing him. He's pursuing him. But it looks so cool, like having the car be like completely engulfed in flames.
Yeah.
And then on this like long, lonely stretch of road where like no one else is on it apparently. That it just looks so cool visually though. And then combined with like the music, it was just a really cool thing. And then like the way it just kind of takes him out, like it just like it's just slow, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, completely like ran him over, then completely engulfed him in flames too. It was like it's so cool.
It's like at that point, it's really putting up a fight.
But yeah, I love watching that car go through that little tiny alleyway, completely destroying itself to get to the last particular bully, and then just crushes him. And
super awesome scene. Yeah, it is.
So I was thinking this. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I don't even remember what I was gonna say. Nothing important. End of the thought, really. But what were you gonna say?
I was thinking this too while I was watching it because I know that you like some gore sometimes and violence. This is not really a gore heavy movie. There a lot,
especially
of it's
coming off the thing.
right. So like like the scene where it crushes Moochie, like it really just kind of it's implied and it crushes him, but then it kind of you don't see anything. You're just really seeing his reaction to being crushed, and you know there's not a lot of you get like Arnie's impaled by like the part of the windshield coming out of the windshield, or whatever. But there's not a lot of blood or gore in it. It's pretty light. So I mean, I know that you like that sometimes, and you like more.
I do. I would like. It doesn't really bother me in this movie. I'm sure I would do with more. And I think it's funny though how they had to fight for an R rating because of the lack of gore. And it seems like when I hadn't heard of a movie that was campaigning for an R rating before, but I guess its demographic that it was after, it wanted the younger audience and teens and stuff to come see it. And I guess the whoever it was, the studio was worried that they wouldn't they'd miss out on that demographic if it was rated PG. So to compromise for that, the writers threw in just some more savvy dialogue, some more F-bombs and whatnot, which I think make up for the lack of gore, because I think that a big part of realistic dialogue includes swearing, and especially at this time period and the age of the characters that we're seeing, I feel like it's very appropriate. So I like some of the more colorful dialogue in this movie that sort of makes up for the R rating that because of the lack of gore. But yeah, certainly like seeing Moochie be crushed to death, I could deal with a little bit more violence there, but I don't think it really took me out of the movie at all. I think something that adds to that sequence is the conversation that Arnie has with Harry Dean Stanton's like detective character later, which also lends me to think that he's a little bit more aware of
what's
Christine is doing, where I can't remember what precedes the conversation, but Harry Dean Stanton's like, they had to, Moochie was cut in half. They had to scrape his legs up with a shovel. And Arnie goes, "Isn't that what you're supposed to do with shit? Scrape it up with a shovel?" It's such a great delivery from him too. So good. One of my favorites.
And there is ambiguity in that too, right? It can be like he knows exactly what he did to him, and or he just like it's just saying it as a a kind of insult, just a general insult about So I love that it could go either way in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm surprised by it. It was, and I wasn't bothered by the lack of gore and violence in it. I mean, it just you know what else I realized while I was watching it? It's not scary, but
no,
it's always
really not.
it's always completely and totally interesting though.
Agreed.
Like I never like as a horror movie, I wasn't like, oh, this is like freaking me out or anything. It was just, and I know that is like the intention that should be the intention for most horror films, but like I was not let down by a lack of scares in it, but like what was going on throughout the whole thing was it kept me kind of glued to what I was watching no matter what. So it's still like an entertaining movie regardless. But but the whole time I was watching, I was like, I'm not even like a little. There was no other than that one kind of cool reveal that you talked about with the headlights and like what jump scare in the movie. But other than that, like there was no
not conventionally scary though. But it's definitely a horror movie. There's no doubt about it. But that's what's great about that word in general is like an umbrella term. Like horror means a lot of different things, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you got to be scared, out of your pants. But one thing that I have left that I wanted to mention, it would have been more appropriate probably to lead with it, but the setting of the movie takes place in what's called Rockbridge, California. I was curious if that is, I know it was filmed actually in the same place where Halloween was filmed.
Yeah, it's filmed in the
California,
same Pasadena neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, where's Rockbridge?
Which is interesting because
it does.
I've never heard of it, so I don't know if they made it up or.
Okay.
Now I'm gonna look it up. But it's interesting knowing that they filmed in the same Pasadena neighborhood that they filmed Halloween in, but it doesn't have the same look of Halloween at all.
No,
where Halloween
really
feels very like Midwest USA,
right?
Despite the palm trees in the background because they forgot to hide that. This like feels not like that, even though when I looked it up, like it's pretty close to where they filmed Halloween,
right?
Like, extremely close. So like it's crazy that like from aesthetically it looks so different from that movie, and to learn that they were filmed like pretty much in the same location is what's crazy to me because it looks completely different.
I guess it's not trying to portray the Midwest too. It's open about being set in California. That might have something to do with it. I do think too, it's fun to imagine these movies like Halloween and Christine taking place in the same universe, having being directed by John Carpenter, filmed in the same place, both take place in 1978, which is an odd, I don't know if maybe the book does, maybe that's why the movie does, but it came out, it was shot in 82, 83. Like, why portray it in 1978? I think that's kind of funny, but just another connection between the movies that there's not really much else to go off of like as connections, but it's just enough to be like, it's fun to imagine these movies both being in the same universe and having this abstract source of evil without any explanation as to where it came from. I think is another cool little connection between them two.
Well, it also has another Halloween connection because David Gordon Green said that he was inspired more by Christine while making Halloween Ends. And if you read, there's some plot elements that feels like it are very similar. I'm just going to read a few of these things. He said that he was heavily inspired by Carpenter's Christine. And some of the things that they've listed, of course, the story of Christine follows Arnie Cunningham, a bullied teen who bought a used 1958 Plymouth Fury named Christine and was corrupted by the evil force that lived within it. In Halloween Ends, the character is named Corey Cunningham. And, and he also, once he encounters Michael Myers, becomes corrupted by his evil and gradually changes. And in addition, the evil gave Corey more confidence and made him possessive of Laurie Strode's traumatized granddaughter, Allison, whom he had started dating. Both Arnie and Corey meet ugly ends, but while Christine seemed to mourn Arnie's death, Michael flat out murdered Corey, who stole his mask in the film. They also said that Halloween Ends borrows various visual touches, settings, and plot points from Carpenter's Christine. For example, Corey didn't have his own 58 Plymouth, but he had a motorcycle with a very bright headlight that is reminiscent of Arnie's vehicle of choice. Corey and Allison also ate in a 50s style diner with a red and white color scheme, which are also the same colors as Christine. Halloween Ends even has many scenes set in a junkyard, just like Christine, including its finale, where the townspeople take Michael's body to be destroyed in an industrial shredder. A lot of people have brought up those comparisons. A lot of people who defend Halloween Ends use that as a defense of Halloween Ends, that maybe this was more of a inspiration of John Carpenter's work rather than it just being like a Halloween movie. I think that I don't hate Halloween Ends, but I think that's kind of like a cop-out answer.
I think it's cool to be influenced by that movie, but I gotta make up my own mind. I know I haven't taken the time to watch Ends yet, but I haven't forgotten about it. I plan on doing it. I know it's going to be a busy end of the year with a lot of stuff that I got to get in before we break down our 2023 review, but I might try and find time to, especially now knowing that there's some inspiration from Christine. I find that cool. Similarly, though, to the Halloween franchise, I'm seeing here too. I didn't know this until today that I guess there is plans to remake Christine. It's going to be a Blumhouse production as well.
Do you know much? I didn't know anything about that till I didn't know about that till today.
Okay.
And
thoughts?
I have thoughts with this with Blumhouse.
Yeah, it's really going to be hit or miss. I think it could be remade. I don't think it's like untouchable necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily campaign for a remake. I like the original just as it is.
I don't think it's a horror movie that has the whole like, oh, please don't touch that and remake it.
Right.
There, you could definitely probably improve on some things, maybe. I think if they marketed the right way, it could do really well. I could see them really having a really fun marketing campaign to promote it, where it would be really cool. Like, and the thing is, like, horror movie marketing is some of the best marketing film wise,
right?
And I think they could do something really cool here. But, and you know, I'll read what Stephen King said about the original, but it seems like he'd be kind of open to another take on it, since he didn't particularly wasn't blown away by what
Carpenter's version,
what Carpenter did. He said while he was promoting the film adaptation of Dreamcatcher in 2003, he mentioned Christine as one of the 2 film adaptations of his work that had bored him. He said, I may just be the most adapted novelist in modern times, and I don't say that with pride so much as with a kind of stunned amusement. Several honorable adaptations have come from this 30-year spew of celluloid, and the best of those have had few of the elements I'm best known for: science fiction, fantasy, the supernatural, and pure gross-out moments. The books that do have those elements have, by and large, become films that are either forgettable or outright embarrassing. Others, I'm thinking chiefly of Christine and Stanley Kubrick's take on The Shining, should have been good, but they just aren't. They're actually sort of boring. Speaking for myself, I'd rather have bad than boring.
Okay. Well, that is definitely not.
Tell us how you're.
Yeah.
Tell us how you really feel.
I disagree. I don't find anything boring about Christine. Maybe compared to the novel, having not read it, I can't make the comparison. But I don't find Christine the film boring at all. But I find it very entertaining.
I don't either. I don't know how to land on that sometimes. I actually love The Shining, and I remember the first time I heard that he didn't like the movie. I was like, that made me feel some kind of way. But then I was like, well, the book is his baby, and if he feels like Stanley Kubrick,
right.
I don't want to say shit all over it, because I don't think he did. I think Stanley Kubrick was like, I'm going to make my movie,
right?
Instead
exactly.
of making, and that didn't go over.
Too bad.
I mean, Stephen King feels like the ABC made for TV movie version of The Shining is better, closer adaptation.
Is that not the one that did he not direct that one?
I can't remember if he did or not.
He did direct his own Shining movie. I just didn't know if that was the one.
So but it's not good. Like, I don't think it's good.
I don't think anybody thinks it's really that good, but
I feel weird when directors do this, because it's like, oh well, I liked it. I mean,
right.
I felt that way about Steven Spielberg talks not the best about Hook, and I love Hook.
Okay.
And he's always just like, oh, it's not one of my best movies. And most people that love Hook, if they grew up with it, they're just like, don't shit on my childhood by saying that.
Right.
So I mean, again, it's his novel, it's his source material. I just can't. I mean, but again, I guess it would help if we both read the book.
Right.
But it seems like what we got here is I mean, as a film itself, with a premise as silly as this is, I think the execution is pretty good, pretty solid for what.
Completely agree.
Could have been, because this could have been a really bad B movie.
Exactly. In the hands of maybe anybody else.
Yeah, and we could have enjoyed it on that level. It could have been like, oh, that was stupid fun.
But here it's genuinely good as well.
Yeah, it was a lot smarter than it any right to be.
This may be a hot take. I want to know if you agree or disagree, if you have any ideas about it. But if this Blumhouse remake does come to light in the future, because I don't know how far along it is, other than at the idea stage, but I would suggest not using the 1958 Plymouth Fury. I would find a different car, maybe something more timely, if maybe, something else forgotten. And if it's going to be, I would imagine it'd be like a modern interpretation. I'd say find another car that went into obscurity in like the 2000s or the 90s or something and bring that back. I think that could be cool.
They're going to pick like a VW bug or something.
Oh, God. I like the train of thought, but not necessarily that model car. But I think it could be fun to find another car and maybe call it something else. But
whatever you find, it has to still kind of have like its own iconic look, I guess.
Definitely.
If you were to change it.
Because this, to be perfect.
The big selling point of the movie is just how nice this car looks too. It's a beautiful vehicle. But I actually appreciate that hot take. I mean, that would make it more than just like a kind of rehash. There's kind of like
exactly
basic idea, but like change. But even though the whole classic car thing, I mean, like if they were to keep it, and said it today, it would still work because like a lot of people do love collecting classic cars still. Like it's not like a thing that's like kind of gone away. I mean, a lot of people still try to get, buy them as much as they can because they're, some people view them as like collectors. I have some people don't even like drive their classic cars. They're just kind of like they're on display in their driveways, so they just like having a classic vehicle. So it would still work in today's setting with a classic car, but I kind of do like your idea to change it so it's not just a total, regurgitation
carbon
of what
copy
was
remake.
No.
So I think it could be. I'm open to it more so than other remakes or proposed remakes of classic movies, but I think that would be something that would have to not be forgone. It would have to be a different car, I think, to really make it work. Otherwise, you're not going to really improve on John Carpenter's movie, if you ask me.
Right. Now, I would like to know what was going on in 1983 because we kind of talk about this with release dates. I mean, we talked about it with Gremlins opening in June with a complete Christmas setting and actually being out of theaters before Christmas of 1984.
Yeah.
Christine comes out December 9th, 1983, which is more closer to the holiday season than spooky season. Seems like a weird time to release a horror movie. I know we've seen it done. Like Scream did that. Scream 2 did it. It works. Hell, The Exorcist came out on like Christmas Eve.
Right. Yeah.
So
Robert Eggers' Nosferatu's coming out on Christmas, so it's still being done. Yeah.
But like, it seemed like a really weird. I wonder what was going on in '83 October. I kind of want to look that up just to see like if there were other horror movies that might have been too much competitions.
Maybe it had something to do with wanting to capitalize on, the book also premiering that year. Cause like you mentioned, it went into production before the book had come out. So maybe it just had something to do with the timeline of the movie being greenlit and stuff. But I agree. Like, I guess it kind of helps that the movie takes place over a few months, including the holiday season and the new year. But it doesn't feel in any way like it needed that sort of that it fits that time of year for the release date. So I'm also curious why December 9th.
What I'm seeing, Stephen King's The Dead Zone came out in October 1983. That's one.
Okay.
And let's see. Yeah, I can't see anything else that is like a significant horror release. And yeah, but maybe you're right. It could have been more about just when it went in production and like when they could release it.
Maybe it was a safe weekend.
Yeah, because it didn't flop by any means. I mean, I will say this. I and you're a John Carpenter fan. A lot of the reviews I read for the movie, even the positive ones, pointed out that it's competently directed by John Carpenter, but kind of failed to live up to his kind of early promise with like Halloween. And I just, it seemed like a lot of his movies, even though he had that really good streak in the 80s, were measured by that first success and that first, not just financial success, but critical success. And I was like wondering what you thought about, do you think that's fair to do that to a director? And just like, we got to just judge, each of his projects on their own merits.
I think in a perfect world, we should be doing that. I don't think it's necessarily unfair to sort of give this, to analyze the trajectory based on, creator's first work. That's still done to this day. And probably always, I think it's just a symptom of analyzing art and cinema as an art form. But I completely disagree. Like, I think this followed and there was a clear trajectory of John Carpenter's filmography, and after obviously this movie comes out after The Thing, and I still regard The Thing as his crowning achievement, and its legacy is definitely more impactful than Christine. But I think that Christine is still a hit coming off of The Thing. I don't think this was in any way a regression in his career. I don't look at it that way anyway. I still think that he had a good forward momentum going after this movie, and his movies got even better, at least throughout the 80s too, as he went. But that's me. Clearly not everyone agrees with that, but I thought Christine was a great movie for him at the time that he made it.
I think his follow-ups, of course, I think Halloween, like you and I are like reversed on that, where like The Thing is like your John Carpenter movie, Halloween's mine.
Right.
But I've never really until you get like way deep in his filmography, and you can tell like he's kind of fallen off a little bit, like it's like in the 90s,
right?
Stuff like that. But like, I never really looked at his post Halloween work and been like, my first thought has never been like, oh, that's not as good as that. I've been able to like separate, you know, oh, this is still solid work. Also, they've all been very different. Too.
Yeah,
he never really tried to recreate Halloween. Like he never went about like, you know, everything he did after that, even if there was horror related, it was all different. So I think that's why it was also hard for me to compare, like, you know, The Fog to Halloween or like The Thing and all that stuff.
Right.
Like, they were just all very different movies.
Agree.
So,
and
like,
I guess,
at least he didn't try to like, you know, make another slasher film or something like that. And then you would kind of be, then I think it'd be a lot harder not to compare the two movies.
It also, the fact that many of his movies are so different too, it kind of begs the question, like, why are we comparing his earlier works to his later career stuff that is just really not the same? How do you, it's like apples to oranges, like,
right,
to compare Christine to either The Thing or The Fog or Halloween, it just seems like a moot point. It's not the same sort of movie. It's him experimenting with something else, completely different story. While there might be similarities, like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like those movies are, there's very few movies in his filmography that are destined to feel compared to.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think Christine was a hit. While there are definitely certain movies in his filmography that I think are either steps up or steps down. It's not a clear straight line or an increase, but I don't think Christine was a step backwards by any means. And it's nice to see that it at least was somewhat more of a financial success than The Thing was, because that was definitely a bomb. But Christine at least doubled its budget.
Well, it's interesting that it hurt his career, but it's, you know, he still had movies that came out pretty closely after The Thing, right? But like, you know, The Thing was supposed to be such a big money maker for Universal, they thought, and it definitely bombed, and that's why they took Firestarter away from him. So they saw those numbers and they're like, well, no, you can't do this.
And now who talks about Firestarter?
Yeah, the only thing that people know about Firestarter is that Drew Barrymore's in it. She's on the cover art. Right. And it didn't make a lot of money either. So whoever,
there you go.
I don't even know who ended up directing Firestarter, but it's not like it was a groundbreaking horror film by any means. It did get remade with Zac Efron.
Was that this year or last year?
I think it was last year. I watched it. Don't really remember much from it. Didn't really love it. He was good in it. There's that. But that's about it. I thought it was interesting too. Something about the car is that they said that some of King's details about the car were incorrect in the book. Like the 1956 to 58 Plymouth Fury was only available as a two-door coupe, while the book described it as a four-door sedan, which would have made it a Savoy or Belvedere model. During Lee's choking scene, Christine is shown to have common vertical lock buttons on the inside door panels. Chrysler vehicles of this era were not equipped with such buttons. To lock the door handle has to be pushed downward. King also mentions a shift lever for the automatic transmission, but in real life, it had push button controls as well.
Yeah, which is odd. And I heard I guess in production, the automatic transmission gave them a lot of issues.
Yeah,
at the time. Yeah,
and then Carpenter, we talked about the whole regeneration scene. He had not planned to film the car's regeneration scenes, but gave special effects supervisor Roy Arbogast 3 weeks to devise a way for the car to rebuild itself. Arbogast and his team made rubber molds from one of the cars, including a whole front end. One of the cars was stripped of its engine to accommodate internally mounted hydraulics that pulled the framework inward, crumpling the car with a shot then run backwards in the final film.
Right, which, again, you get the sense that this is being shot in reverse. Yeah, but
it still looks brilliant. So cool.
Yeah.
And then 23 cars were used in the film, initially sold as scrap metal after filming ended. One of the best-known surviving vehicles was eventually rescued from the junkyard and restored. It was subsequently bought by a collector named Bill Gibson of Pensacola, Florida. And then one of the Christines was auctioned off at an auto auction in Florida in January 2020 as well. Yeah. And it has a 69% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Roger Ebert liked it. Yeah, you know what? At this point, it's become a thing for us to mention him because sometimes he loves horror movies and sometimes he doesn't.
Right.
but he did like this
Most
one.
famously, he doesn't, right?
Yeah,
he's got a lot
usually
of
he
issues
doesn't.
with horror, but he gave this one, I think, 3 out of 4 stars.
3 out of 4 stars. He said, by the end of the movie, Christine has developed such a formidable personality that we are actually taking sides during its duel with the bulldozer. This is the kind of this is the kind of movie where you walk out with a silly grin, get in your car, and lay rubber halfway down the Eisenhower. The New York Times gave it a mixed review, saying the early parts of the film are engaging and well acted, creating a believable high school atmosphere. Unfortunately, the later part of the film is slow in developing and it unfolds in predictable ways. Variety gave it a negative review. They said Christine seems like a retread. This time it's a fire engine red 1958 Plymouth Fury that's possessed by the devil. And this deja vu premise from the novel by Stephen King combined with the crazed vehicle format makes Christine appear pretty shop worn. Yeah, that's not that. I don't agree with Variety most of the time either. And I guess I wouldn't have been, I guess I wouldn't have been 1983 as well. I haven't graded this on Letterboxd. I forgot, but I'm going to tonight. But did you score it?
Well, I didn't rescore it. Like I scored it in September, and then I just kept my same score of it. But I have it with a 4 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd right now, and felt that was suitable enough. My enjoyment of it is certainly has not waned at all. If anything, I appreciate it just as much, if not more, on rewatch. So that is my score for it now, which is the case. I think most of my Carpenter movies are at least that or higher. But yeah, what would you give it now, thinking about it just coming off your watch?
I would give it a 4. I think it's a good score. And
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was very entertaining. I think it's interesting that review said it was slow. It does, I guess, like for some people, I guess if this came out today, it does have a bit of a slow burn kind of. It doesn't really happen quick. I
thought it was paced really well.
Yeah, I think it is. I guess it doesn't, like, for me, things didn't happen right away, but I didn't really care about that. I mean, I loved how there was like a gradual progression to what the car was doing and all that.
And when we're not getting Christine moments, we're getting like good character development. Showing Arnie and Dennis and Arnie and Lee. Like I think the characters are treated well when the show is not about Christine.
Yeah, I agree. And I found it completely entertaining. I really having not watched it in so long, I didn't know what I was going to think about it actually, and I realized by watching it that there was so much that I didn't remember, like because it's been so long. Nice. So it really did. Yeah. So it really feel like I was watching it for the first time again. So it was. Loved it.
Yeah, to me, that last shot of the movie too, the closing shot is like the cherry on top of this movie too. It ends on such a great note too, where we get the little. Christine has been trampled on and compacted into a big cube of metal, and then the characters are onward looking, and we get this close up of this big hunk of junk, and we see the bar sort of moving on its own, and then it ends. I think that's such a great way to end.
I love the fake out too with the music before that. And it's just the guy just carrying the radio, and they're just like, and it's like a really good fake out. Before we end it, I wanted to ask you, because I feel like a part of me thinks, even though if they made it today, and I don't even know how this kind of goes in the book, but Arnie dying at the end, how'd you feel about that? Were you like that needed to happen, or are you kind of like, as a character, like it's not like it's his fault that this is all happening? I guess it's happening to him.
Yeah, there's a line that Harry Dean Stanton has where he says he's talking to Arnie and Lee in the junkyard at the end, and he says, some things can't be helped, some people too. And I think that is a great, if not tragic, way of looking at Arnie's story and his demise. Like, whether or not he had ever encountered Christine, we will never know. He did. He was transfixed by the car, and then that set him on this sort of trajectory where he would end up being consumed by it. And ultimately, I don't think that after so long of him putting all this time and effort in bonding with the car, they wouldn't have been able to exist without each other, and they both needed to go, or Arnie. Like, I can't imagine like a scenario where Christine is defeated and Arnie is still left there without it. You know what I mean? I feel they are one and the same, and he had to go if Christine was going to go, and I don't think it would have worked at all if I don't really see how you get Arnie on the side of demolishing Christine. So he unfortunately had to be one of the characters that goes. I think it's kind of brave too to have your lead, if not co-lead, die too, which I can appreciate that.
Yeah, because there's no real moment where you have Arnie kind of being like, what's happening to me, or like, kind of having
fully
like this,
into it.
This like conflict of like noticing the change, or like really addressing it in a way that like, and then realizing what Christine is,
right?
Kind of having this kind of inner conflict, which is, I think, some stories would do that, kind of this kind of like push and pull thing a little bit. But yeah, I don't think you could do it without him dying at the end. And I think it's also interesting too, because it might say a lot that, like, yes, the car did change him, but like some of that stuff might have been already inherently inside him already, and it just and that just pulled it out of him.
Yeah.
So
I like that interpretation too.
Like, he already had a little bit of that kind of evil in him, and the car just kind of brought it out of him. But it is kind of like, I found myself being kind of like not sad, and like I wasn't like teary-eyed or anything, but it was like, oh, like, because seeing what he was before, and like how he got kind of like trampled on and picked on, and like, he not the most confident guy and all this other stuff,
right?
That when the ending is kind of sad, because you're like, oh, well, there was that guy at the beginning that was a completely different dude from what we end up with, and it does suck that that person has to go. But I think that was probably the only way that it could.
I think the ending is very satisfying.
Yeah, it works. It works indeed. Well, man, I can't think of anything else I want to say about it other than if you have gone as long as I did without watching it, watch it again, because I think you'll find yourself like being pleasantly surprised by it, like I was again today, because I totally forgot so much of it, and I think I will make it a kind of yearly part of like my spooky season viewing now. I think it's there.
I might take some time off for having seen it twice in 1 year.
You watched it a lot.
I am also very much looking forward to the time where I see it again. I might put some years between it, but I would absolutely recommend it to any Carpenter fans out there that maybe haven't scratched this one off the list. I absolutely recommend, as a super fan of John Carpenter, this comes with my recommendation, and it's just a great 80s movie, if nothing else, too.
Yeah, I agree. And I know we constantly tease this whole, like, we've talked a lot offline about doing this kind of like director showcase on the show at some point.
Yeah,
he'll be another good one to do, I think. Because even though we've talked about like we've covered Halloween and we've covered this, we've personally have never covered The Thing or Prince of Darkness or any of those movies. So he'd be another one that kind of, especially because he has such a nice little pocket of movies in the 80s that we could
I think it could be fun actually next spooky season to just cover his Apocalypse trilogy too, with The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness would be a lot of fun. And that's 3 movies in one director too. It's kind of like a mini showcase. That would be a lot of fun.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. And I don't own Christine on 4K Blu-ray, but I hear it looks great, and I think I'm going to buy it after watching it today.
I saw that it had that release. That would be awesome.
It feels like it would be a good collection on 4K to have there. So
definitely, I got the measly little DVD here, but it still looks fantastic too. All these years later, I'm not really sure how the technology works. I have a 4K Blu-ray player, but I don't think that does anything if you're just putting the DVD in.
Oh, if it like upscales it, to try to I think some of them upscale it as much as they can, but I mean, it's not gonna be the same effect, I guess. But,
right, but gorgeous film.
Yeah, definitely need the 4K for sure. All right, before you sign us off, I'm just gonna, like we said, we're packing a lot into a few days to close out the holiday season and before playlist goes on break. So we're recording this today, Sunday, December 10th. So we have like a Gremlins episode that'll come out earlier. You'll hear it on Monday. You'll hear this one on Thursday or Friday. Still working that out. And then we're just going to be scheduling out our next few episodes between now and basically the first of the year. So there won't be any gap in episodes at all. But we'll have like a tiny break ourselves, even though we'll be discussing the show in detail about what we're going to do.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's like a little break, but we'll still be talking about what we're going to be doing with 2024, and we have a lot of ideas I know we want to throw at each other to kind of make the show better. And I think when we give you our Black Christmas episode, because that'll probably be the last one you hear of the holiday, during the break, we'll kind of tease what we're going to do in 2024, and one of those being will be Jackson's 1 year in January.
That's right.
So that will be one of the bigger ones that we do after the break as well. He already has an idea for what he wants to do for that, so that'll be fun.
Very much looking forward to that.
It's all his show. I'm not whatever he wants to do, I will do it. And
awesome.
I don't feel right contributing to it. I'm like,
my goodness. Like, what? Whatever you had as an idea to supplement that episode, I am super game for, but there is something in particular I do want to cover, which feels like it would be appropriate. I think it's also awesome that anniversary happens to fall at the beginning of the year. So we will start off strong, and very excited to deliver to you guys what we have in store for 2024. And of course, we got to look back and talk about our favorite movies of 2023 and what we're expecting out of the next year. There will be a lot to cover in January, but still some great content coming to you guys for December as well. And we still got some Christmas movies to cover, which I'm excited for. Oddly enough, not feeling very Grinchy or Scroogey this year. So yeah, there's still lots coming. Although I guess Black Christmas sort of kind of puts me in that camp.
Yeah. So we got Black Christmas will conclude the Bingemas, which is so funny because like you're going to be getting Merry Bingemas episodes for the month of December, but we were able to crank out this limited series in 2 weeks.
Essentially
2 weeks worth of shows. Christine is our second to last anniversary episode. Our last one for the year will be The Faculty, so you'll be hearing that during the break as well. And JC from Work with the Movies will be on that episode, as well as Mark J. Parker. That will be Mark J. Parker's 5th appearance on the show this year.
That's got to be first place, right?
I think it is. Merck has been on a few times, but I don't think in the same calendar year that it's been that much.
Okay.
But Mark has been on, this will be 5 times. And that's just a testament of how good he is at talking about movies from this era. So that'll be fun. Yeah. And Merck's excited to be on it with him because he's never been on one with Mark. And he loves listening to him on ours. And he's guested on other shows that Merck listens to. So he's super excited to actually do one with him. So
And I still know nothing about The Faculty, so I'm pretty much having a blind watch tomorrow.
Are you going in blind?
Yeah.
Oh.
Other than like some of the cast members, that's really. Do you suggest I look up some stuff, or do you think I should go in blind?
No. I guess I think you already know kind of bare bones. Like Kevin Williamson wrote it, the same guy who wrote Scream.
Right. I forgot that until you mentioned it, but now I remember.
So it's basically supposed to do for like the alien kind of invasion movie that Scream did for slasher movies, like self-referential and like, kind of like the characters kind of know about these kind of things. Like it's very much like Scream and like, but yeah, that's I thought you knew a little bit more about it. But
no, nothing. I heard about it a million times, but
that's gonna be interesting when that camera comes on and we ask you. We're gonna go to you first. Like, all right, what did you think of it?
Awesome. Cannot wait for that. I love being put on the spot.
You're either gonna give that kind of awkward shuffle, like, or you might just be like,
I don't get the sense that I'm not gonna like. I am anticipating enjoying it, but which will bode well going into that watch because it's nice to go in with positive aspirations, but. Time will tell. I'm looking forward to chatting about it tomorrow, though.
Me too. With these last couple anniversary episodes, I had to make up for. I still know you did last summer, so yeah. Hopefully,
you don't got to make up for anything. It brings a good dynamic, and I'm glad.
And that episode did well. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. Like, even the bad movies do well because I guess it's just probably fun to hear us rip them apart. Because I don't think
definitely.
Because like while some of us were nice to that movie, we were also very self-aware that it's not good. So. It was fun, but yeah, I did feel the need, like I was like, have to make, because I know you didn't really want to do it, but you did it. You did it for the greater good,
right?
So
exactly.
Gotta make up for it with like better.
They can't all be Christines, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, you're not gonna like everything, so but
true.
They can all be talked about like Christine, though. But
exactly.
And with that, I think that's everything for episode 136 of Back to the Blockbuster. Thank you guys for joining us on this December while we chatted about another John Carpenter movie. Christine, it's been a pleasure. And stay tuned, guys, for the rest that we have planned for you for the month of December. And with the Mary Benjamis miniseries that we got going on, stay tuned to episodes like The Faculty and Home Alone and Black Christmas that are coming at you this month. And as always, find us on Playlist and on their new app, which is available in the iOS store and on Google for you Android users. Thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in for another episode of Back to the Blockbuster, and we will see you next week and throughout the rest of the holiday season. Take care, guys.
Peace.
Take care.